Hey everybody, it's Trigger Bar Philosopher. Welcome back out to the channel. Today we have a great episode planned where we're going to be focusing again on the Bodyguard 2.0 and 380 ACP ammunition testing. In particular, taking another look at the Federal Hydra Shok Deep and with the Fiocchi Defense Dynamics, two of my favorite choices for defense rounds for the Bodyguard 2.0. We're going to be doing some different testing today. It should be a good time. Let's get to shooting. All right, so what are we talking about? We're talking about the fabulous Bodyguard 2.0, which is revolutionizing what I believe to be the pocket carry world, not the concealed carry world, but the pocket carry. This is for when you want something that is for deep concealment and you want to carry a gun that is fun to shoot, that has fair enough capacity, and is right at least on the threshold that can do some damage. So we're testing bullets and defensive ammunition to see what is the best. I have a whole series, and I've done a whole series on them, but I'm still coming back to these two that I think are pretty good. And I wanted to test them just particularly with the Bodyguard instead of doing comparisons with them so that we can just get a little bit better and clearer gel shots with it. So with that said, we've got the Fiocchi Defense Dynamics, which I've found to be good, and it's actually a lot cheaper than a lot of other rounds. And then my all-time favorite, which is the Federal Hydra Shok Deep, which is a pretty unique bullet. If we can zoom in here just a little bit on this aspect, it shows you it has a pretty tough inner core. It's a hard lead inner core, followed by the more softer outer jacket that peels back and performs like a traditional hollow point. One of the issues with 380 ACP, unlike 9mm, unlike 40 Smith & Wesson, 357 SIG, 10mm, is these bullets are going so slow and they're so lightweight that they oftentimes have a hard time getting enough penetration. Throw in some expansion and energy dissipation by that expansion, you may not get deep enough in to do the penetration and do the job. For that reason, some people decide to use full metal jackets or semi-wad cutters or flat tip type bullets. I'm still trying to find a really good defensive ammunition with a hollow point that does at least do a little bit of expansion and provide some energy into gel. I'm going to show here in a second some new testing that we've set up. I think that's going to be awesome, and then we'll get to our shooting. Let's get going. Actually, before we actually get shooting, I want to show you my setup that we have going today. We're going to change things up just a little bit, and I'm going to borrow some tactics from a very famous YouTube reviewer, Gun Sam. I got this idea from another famous YouTube reviewer, Dan the Wolfman. Now, I'm going to be adding some things that Gun Sam does in his videos, and I highly recommend, before you even check out my channel, you should always be checking out his channel. But what he uses is he used this medium density fiber board as a simulation of bone. And so I'm going to be adding that in. I'm going to be doing it a slightly different depth of distance. I believe he does 3 or 4 inches. I'm going to be doing 2 inches. That just gives us a little bit more data. In no way do I mean to offend Gun Sam or to copy, flat out his work, but I always believe that anything that is science should be verifiable. And we should be able to repeat some of his tests. Also, I have some different guns than I've seen on his channel. So this just gives us a look, especially with the Bodyguard 2.0, how some of these self-defense rounds are going to perform under these types of test scenarios. Should be a good time. Let's get to shooting. Okay, well, we have this 99 grain Federal Hydra Shok Deep out of the Bodyguard 2.0. We have our Garmin Xero set up to see if we can capture a velocity. I'm not too confident that we will because we're pretty close to the target. Typically, you're supposed to be further back, but I've had some mild success. Let's see how we do. Let's go down and take a look. Let's just take a quick look at this. I've pulled off the contraption that was holding our clothing barrier. We did have 4 layers of clothing. We had 2 layers of t-shirt, and then we had 2 layers of a heavier, kind of a thermal type t-shirt. So we had 4 layers of t-shirt type material. This is what happened to our MDF. So we did see in that 2 inches, we had decent expansion, and we got pretty good explosion on that MDF. I don't know how to quite capture that, and I'll try to show in a little bit. But as we see, we got through our 2 inches, and it's about 2 inches right there. I'm not great at cutting this. We'll try and figure out some other things in the future. We can see it brought in tons of that fiberboard all the way out to about the 10-inch mark. The bullet did bounce back to about 9 inches. Again, that's going through some of this medium density fiberboard. We did look, I'll have to pull this later. I feel like it looks like the bullet got decent amount of expansion, probably not as much, although I don't know. Look at this round here. That is not just a 355 hole there. That's a pretty decent size hole. This Hydroshock Deep doesn't get super expansion, but it does get decent expansion and decent penetration. I would say after going through this medium density fiberboard, that's a pretty good round. Again, this Hydroshock Deep is constructed in a way that it makes that maybe a little bit more viable because it has this sharp, hard lead core in the inner that allows it to keep driving, and then the softer lead that peels back and opens up like a hollow point. Again, so I think out of this short barrel, that's a pretty decent round. And I know this medium density fiberboard isn't a great approximation of the wood, but look what it did, or of bone. Look what it did to that fiberboard. There's just chunks all over in it. Let's take a look at the front where you do see that fracturing. Again, do you think it's important when bullets hit bone that there is some fracturing? Probably not the perfect, it is not the perfect medium for testing that, but it's a good barrier test for it. And then we see the wound track coming in. That's a zoom in on the bullet. It looks like it is turned butt facing us at this point. All right, my apologies for the weird angle. We're trying to avoid the sun, but I'm going to try to get this Fiocchi 90 grain projectile into our block and through our medium density fiberboard. Let's see how that went. Well, I don't always do this, but look how I screwed that up. I shot too high, so it would have been just going fine above the gel block, but it is kind of cool what we see. That's where it goes. So this bullet can penetrate 2 inches of kind of a pine type board, 1/4 inch of medium fiber board, and then it's there. And that's about it. That's our projectile. Let's try it one more time. You can see it kind of left a nasty exit wound of that MDF in the wood. But yeah. Okay, let's give this Fiocchi one more chance, see if I can do it. I think I did. Might be close to the other one, but let's see what it did. Okay, well, let's take a quick look at this. So what we see from the top bullet is that Fiocchi, and it went in here, and let's take a quick look and see what kind of damage it did. This is from when I had a miss with it, and it went through wood and blew out that way. This is from the Hydroshock Deep, right? A great sized hole. This is from what just went through with the Fiocchi Defense Dynamics. Not as big of a hole. I am guessing, and I think it's kind of proved out with this bullet, that we got a little bit too much clothing jamming up the hollow point expansion. So we had 4 layers of t-shirt, we had 2 layers of gel, we had our 1/4 inch MDF, and then we see, as we move along this wound track, we had some pretty good probably tumbling that was going through here, making some nice wounds. And what we ended up with was a bullet that is not expanded very much at all, but enough to make it kind of like a semi-wad cutter. Let me just take a closer look. So that's our bullet right there. You can tell that it's not expanded, and we'll pull it out in just a second. Tell it's not very expanded. It did get, though, to 14 inches. One of the challenges that you get with these hollow points out of a 380 is that when you get clothing and other material that plugs it up, is that you don't tend to get, and you don't get very much expansion, and it turns out to be penetrating more like a full metal jacket. Now, in the case of the 380, that's not bad. Look, we didn't get full expansion, and it only got to 14 inches. I still want something getting to 14 inches. Now, we are doing a much better simulation of bone, so I think penetration out to this even 9-inch mark where the bullet landed, but you could count out to 12 or 11 with the Federal Hydra Shok Deep down here. These, I still don't think that that's over penetration, because again, if we had a set of ribs here on the back somewhere at this distance, I think it gets stuck in the skin and it doesn't over penetrate. So I think both of these rounds are pretty good. I would have liked to have seen more expansion. Again, we'll take a look at this in just a second. But again, I still think that these are very nice rounds. You want something that's going to get enough penetration. We tested this earlier in a previous video, and it got around 12, 13 inches of penetration with expansion. So again, that's why I often don't do testing with any of these other sources, is because that's the worst case. The worst case is the thing expands too much, especially with a 380, and doesn't get deep enough. But in this case, we see it didn't expand and it got a little bit deeper, which is fine. So if that happened on your target, that's okay. Sure, would you like more expansion? Absolutely, right? But at the worst case, you're not going to hit someone behind. You don't have to worry about that hollow point over penetration. Okay, well, let's just take a quick look at these two rounds from the Bodyguard 2.0. And I'm shooting multiple videos at the same time. And what's funny about this is that this Federal Hydra Shok Deep bullet got slammed into from a different bullet from a future test that you're going to see in the next few days. So the deformation on that is not real. Notice, do you see how that has been crushed on this side over here? That's because the other bullet slammed into it and deformed it. But that doesn't change. It did got okay pushback. We can see it got limited pushback. I'm sure that's the clothing. I'm sure that's the MDF causing it to do that. But it got decent expansion. Again, we're not going to get great stuff here. We're comparing with 380, where it's not like, oh, you get this great one that goes so good, because it's so hard to get deep enough penetration and enough expansion. You kind of have to make the trade-off to get just a little bit of expansion and enough penetration. This Hydroshock Deep has a great balance of that. When we compare it to our Fiocchi Defense Dynamics, we see it also just started and it didn't get as much pushback from it. But again, that's okay. Again, this is going through the clothing and other barriers. And so, like I mentioned before, at worst case, this is what it's doing, and it's doing pretty good damage as it's going through, even though it did not get its full expansion. We're going to be doing a little bit different testing than what I normally do. This is a little bit out of my comfort zone. I'm definitely not an expert in this, but one of the reasons I come to the range is to train and not just shoot crap into gel. So I actually want to do a little bit of practical shooting with my Bodyguard. I have 2 magazines, the smaller magazines, so 10 rounds each, of this Federal Hydra Shok Deep. I've got a number of targets out. I've got some steel. I've got some paper. I'm going to start out at about 3 or 4, 5 yards from the paper. I'm going to move back. I'll hit steel at a safe distance. I have no idea how much of this will be caught on camera. I've got 2 cameras set up. Hopefully some amount of this will get cut up, and hopefully I will not shoot any of my cameras. Okay, with that said, I'm just going to go on my own mental mind of a go. I have my pocket holster. This is a Muddy River tactical pocket holster. I also like the Vetter locker, but they didn't have it at the time. I think they're out now for the Bodyguard 2.0, but Muddy River Tactical is a very good holster. I paid for all this crap. I'm not advertising anything. Okay, so with that said, you're going to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. What I mostly want to see is in these 20 rounds, do I get any malfunctions with my Bodyguard 2.0? And it turns out I'm at a shooting range and there's lots of gunfire in the background, so please, quoting Paul Harrell, please bear with the gunfire. But here we go. Ready? Boop. Okay, well, that was a successful test in my opinion. We'll go take a look at these targets. I don't think the targets were all hits, but we'll see. Yeah, that was pretty cool. I enjoyed doing that. Hopefully you can see that. I started off with, I think, 3 shots. Boom, 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 or maybe boom, boom, and 1 was out. So 2 alphas, a couple Charlies. Important part is I got some are here in the A zone. I don't think I would have hit the heart or the night-night switch, but I didn't go for the night-night switch with it. Back at distance, I shot a couple of times. At this type target, they would have been hits on body. You can tell that kind of neat design of the Federal Hydra Shok Deep punching holes. It's kind of a cool little look into it. But even back at distance, I got a couple of shots right on the target. I shot at this maybe 2 or 3 times. It wasn't enough to move these back. So I don't even know if I shot at that target. Definitely took several shots at this. I know I probably missed some. Again, I was doing point shooting, but at the time I wanted to get back to a safe distance for the steel. Again, I was shooting hollow points, so they won't ricochet as much because they're just going to flatten out and try to land on the ground. But I did get some, I thought, good shots back at, 10, 12 yards back at distance with this Bodyguard 2.0. Okay, well now we have, again, the Bodyguard in the pocket, and we've got this Federal Defense Dynamics. Again, don't follow the form and all of those things, but we're just going to see if this functions and get a little bit of training in while we do. All right, mental model, whoop. Oh, we are done. Not a malfunction. Gotta keep moving. Oh my God, a malfunction on the last round. Oh, look at that. Look at that. It caught. It caught it. Well, I don't like that, but I don't know. I don't know what to think of that happening on the last round. Again, I have done a little bit of extra polishing of this feed ramp on my Bodyguard on both of the feed ramps, but yeah. Okay, again, we'll start off. This is where I was point shooting. I got 1 shot inside and 2 kind of questionable shots, although that one up high in the high thoracic neck region, probably maybe one of my best shots, even though the other one landed in it. These were a little bit more at distance that I shot onto the target. I was shooting center of mass there. So we're a little wild, and I was trying to be wild. You can see we did get 3 of the plates. I actually hit 4 of the plates. About the time we got the malfunction. I shot once or twice and I got misses, although I got maybe 1 hit right here, I believe, and it's possible I got a hit right there too. And then I got quite a bit more hits on just the bigger kind of, I don't know, body type target. So yeah, that's what we did. I think it's okay. Okay, well today we took another look again at the Bodyguard 2.0, but today we focused on a couple of different ammunitions. 2 of the ones that I think are great. There are some 2 or 3 others that I think are very solid performers for the Bodyguard 2.0 if you're looking especially for a expanding hollow point type design for the Bodyguard. But today again we looked at the Federal Hydra Shok Deep and the Fiocchi Defense Dynamics, both of which I think performed okay in the gel. What we added today was, again, that look at what if you have layers of clothing. We did 2 layers of t-shirt, 2 layers of a thermal type garment. And then we did 2 inches of gel. And then we did the 1/4 inch MDF. And then we saw how far it would get. Again, the Federal Hydra Shok Deep only went 10 inches. It might be 10.5, something, because I don't know if when I measured it the second time, if it had the MDF in it, but 10.5 inches, something like that is totally fine. Because again, it's going through the medium density fiberboard. So I wouldn't, and the layers of clothing, I wouldn't expect it to go as far without it. I've heard Gun Sam talk about that medium density fiberboard sometimes impacts as much as 6 inches. And again, when we tested this out of the Bodyguard 2.0, it was about 6 inches of further. It was out at about 16 inches. So with that said, I think that we got great performance in terms of penetration. What we didn't get great performance was expansion. The Bodyguard 2.0 showed us with the Federal Hydra Shok Deep, we barely got any expansion. And with the Fiocchi, we got no expansion. Albeit those jacketed hollow points, when they're stuffed with clothing, they perform very much like a flat top or semi-wad cutter as they're breaking through the barrier. And so those holes look slightly larger and just a little bit more nasty than what you would get with a round nose, full metal jacket type bullet. Is it any different than what you would get from a flat top round nose or from a semi-wad cutter? Probably not. In fact, those, I do plan to test those, and I think those are probably decent options for the 380 ACP ammunition. Because I don't think even with any of them you're going to get too much penetration. Although the full metal jacket with the tipped spear tip nose, it may get a little bit of too much over penetration. So I still think that this is a good case. We saw without any of those things in front, the MDF or the clothing, we had great penetration and great expansion. With the clothing, we saw that these projectiles hardly got any expansion, clothing and MDF. And that's a concern with hollow points. But as you can tell, with other rounds like 40, 9mm, 10mm, you get over penetration. With this, you don't get over penetration, so it's not a concern for me that these hollow points didn't open up. So that's my take. I hope you have a take, and I hope you share it with me in the comments below. I hope everyone has a great week. Let's get shooting.